Oh, I hope she's continuing on the same link here. Um, there's a fourth creation story or third creation story in the Gospel of John. And in that creation story, what we find that's really extraordinary is, again, that it's anthropological. And I'm going to show you something real quick here, and we'll do more detailed exegesis another time. As you know, the prologue is about, so it's kind of a targum, it's a reading of Genesis 1. In the beginning was the Logos, and we understand, about all kinds of stuff about Logos we'll get into here. We move down to this Logos becomes flesh, okay? Becomes a human being. Now, in John 5, there's an argument about Jesus and his relation to the one he calls Father. And he's going to break open the creation story at that point, because they're accusing him of laboring on the Sabbath, of working on the Sabbath. He broke a law, one of their laws, okay? Jesus says, my Father is a working man to this day. In other words, my Father hasn't finished creating. If you're a regular Jew or Christian today, when you talk about the Creator and the creation, it's like, boop, done. No, Jesus is saying, my Father's still working. And I too work, or as C.H. Dodd translates it, my Father is a working man to this day, and I am a working man to this day. Because God is working, I am working. And my working reflects the working of the Father. There you have a crack in the creation story, because it says God rested and then had the Sabbath. Jesus is saying, you accuse me of breaking Sabbath laws because that bothers your understanding of who God is from that first text. But you fail to recognize that that God is still working. You concluded the text. You came to the end of chapter 2, verse 3, and you said, okay, that part was done. No, that's eschatological. Jesus is saying, you don't understand. It's a work in progress. It's still going on. What is going on? This word become flesh, this word become human, who is working still. Something is being created. What is it that's being created is given to us in John 19 from the cross. Important here, folks, theology of the cross. I keep coming back to it. Jesus says to Telestai, it is finished. It is inevitable that we misread that text with reference to atonement. There's no way the gospel writer is going to begin his book with the Creator and becoming flesh, continuing to create and bringing something to completion, something to fruition. And what is that is elevated higher than the highest heights, even though it's only 6 feet off the ground? The crucified Son. He embodies the character of the Father. He becomes the end of creation, the crown of creation. He is the crown of this whole first creation, Jesus. And when he's raised from the grave, we have another creation story. That creation story which validates the true human that was revealed as the true Adam, the one that made it, the one that did it, the one that became the kind of human that the Adam and Eve could have become, but didn't. The one that we too can now become, because we can imitate him as he imitated the Father. We can become like him. The Greeks want to call this theosis. It is, but it's not mystical. It's in how we relate. It's ethical. Okay. It is finished. There you have it. That's your creation story. The resurrection brings in this other creation story, but there's still another creation story beyond that, and that's Pentecost. Pentecost harkens back to Babel. Pentecost is the reversal of that narrative. It's saying that everything in this narrative, going from 2 4 to chapter 11 is going to be reversed. It's being undone, and it starts with the undoing of sacrifice. Yes, Pentecost celebrates the law at Sinai, but the goodness of God that day said, we're going to go back, we're going to take this deconstruction way back, and we're going to begin at the end of the myth. And we're going to deconstruct sacrifice by bringing humanity together with redeemed language, which is what Pentecost did. Now, the writer of the Revelation has another creation story, but it's a recapitulation of the Genesis narrative. And the last 2 chapters of the Revelation really don't fit with the book. I'm of the belief that the first 4 chapters and the last 2 are added to a tribulation text. But so I won't even bother with that one. That one doesn't mean anything to me. But the Pauline Johannine reinterpretation of the rabbinic or the scribal Genesis narrative, to me, is absolutely fantastic. Does the New Testament concern itself with the origin of evil? Well, it's mentioned in John 8, where Jesus is having an argument with interlocutors because he's claiming again that he has a relationship with the Father, and they're trying to square that with what they know of God, and it's not squaring for them. And he accuses them of having a father who is a liar and a murderer from the beginning. He's taken the Genesis 3 text and the Genesis 4 text, brought them together, and said, there's your satanic principle, and you follow that satanic principle. And the logic is, if you follow that satanic principle of Genesis 3 and 4, you're going to end up in Genesis 11 with sacrifice, which is exactly what they do. It's better that one man should die than the nation perish. Do you see the logic? So, but is there a doctrine of original sin in the New Testament? And the answer to that is no. There are explorations, my friends, of sin and the origin of sin. And of the 2 times that I know this takes place in the New Testament, well, you could, if you want to use the John 8 text, you can use the John 8 text, although that's with reference to specific interlocutors. There's only 2 other texts I know that are going to deal with the origin of sin. The first one is Paul in Romans 5. We're going to look at that text. And the second one looks at it from a rabbinic perspective, and that's the Epistle to James, chapter 1, and actually the whole book. The whole book, read through the lens, again, of mimetic theory, you see this anthropological pattern running through Jewish thinking, good Jewish thinking, okay? Like we find in the Torah, like we find in Paul, or for us, the writer of the Gospel of John, and also now in the book of James here. It's excellent. And each time, the emphasis is placed on the human. So the New Testament writers could never do a Flip Wilson and say, the devil made me do it, okay? We are the Satan. We are the origin of evil, we, the human species. And in order to understand that, we have to reframe our metaphors. Again, that's going to be the importance of the Jacob's book. So now, I need to go back and kind of give you a little history. It's a little personal history, but I think it'll help explain where I want to go with this. In the 1980s, when I was in seminary, there was developing a brand new discipline known as narrative theology. And narrative theology would develop in the 80s and 90s and kind of reach a popular height, from about 95 to 2005 or so, before it got completely co-opted by theologies in the genitive. In that narrative theological movement that was occurring, particularly in systematic theology, said that doctrine can no longer be done propositionally as, statements, and um, it had to be done in terms of the way the Bible structured it, and that's narrative, story, metaphor. So I want to take you on a little journey. I'm going to ask you a question. You may use the term fundamentalism. Do you know where fundamentalism originated or how it originated? Do you want to know why fundamentalism is fundamentalism? Well, in order to do that, you would have to go back to a series known as, is this right side up? The Fundamentals. The Fundamentals. And what is this series? Well, I have 10 volumes of it. And there were, at that time, two anonymous Christian laypersons who funded scholarly writing on things like the virgin birth of Christ, the deity of Christ, the purposes of the incarnation, the personality and deity of the Holy Spirit, the proof of the living God, history of the higher criticism, and a personal testimony. That is volume 1 of the Fundamentals. And if you're into that tradition, you'll recognize some of those names. This goes for 10 volumes. Each of these essays is being written against liberalism, Protestant liberalism. And it's the arguments that the conservative Reformed tradition in particular is having with liberalism that then form these. What are the problems? Okay, these are the solutions to the liberal problems. That's fundamentalism. They think they have the solution to the problem of liberalism, but they might, but they don't have the gospel. Okay? All they did was sit and solve what they thought were problems in liberalism. And, in many cases, I can go back and read these and agree with these writers. Okay? Don't get me wrong. Okay? But it's the narrative frame that comes from that. And their narrative frame is propositional, doctrinal statements. Okay? And that has then been the bane of Protestantism. So I was really happy in the 1980s, and I had been studying Barton and Bonhoeffer and this for about 7-8 years when this discipline of narrative theology developed. And there was a really good book that helped me. It's an older book. I mean, if you can find it on Amazon cheap, I think you'll enjoy it. I did. It really kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things. It's called The Theater of God by Robert Roth. Okay, The Theater of God by Robert Roth. And it opened up for me the importance of learning how to talk about doctrine, but as a narrative, as a story, as God's story, euangelion, gospel. And the second book, and I think I recommended both these books in the very first lecture I did in unsystematic theology. So you can go back to that. But the second book was Jeffrey Wainwright's doxology. Okay? Jeffrey Wainwright's doxology. Why? Because everything comes out of Christian worship and Christian, in theory, in the best of all possible worlds. The Christian worship time is a narrative. It's a story. And it concludes with the Passion, the Eucharist. And when it's done right, it's telling a big story every Sunday when it's done right. And it's telling that gospel frame every Sunday. Unfortunately, in the churches, it's not the gospel frame that's preached. It's this Second Temple frame imported into Christianity, and then you try to preach. And don't anybody do a screenshot of that and make it a meme. Okay. In the next talk, and probably the one after that, we're going to learn how to redo the metaphoric structure of our thinking about sin using the best Jewish thinking that's available to us in Torah and the apostolic writers and the rabbis as well, because not everything that's in the New Testament is not in Judaism. There's many commonalities as you read the later rabbis. Um, some, I shouldn't say many, I should say some. And we're going to look at some fun stuff too that I think will tantalize you. But it's very important to reframe our view of sin. Why? Because if we get the sin problem incorrect, we're going to get the sin solution incorrect. So we have to frame the problem correctly. And then the solution makes sense. Then there is a real solution to a real problem, not a fake solution to a made-up problem. Okay? I look forward to seeing you next time. Peace and love, everybody. Hope you're enjoying these. You're welcome to show your appreciation. I ain't getting rich here, folks, but I am grateful for those that love me and show it. I appreciate that. I appreciate some of you very, very, very much. And I would name you if I knew you wanted to be named. And if you want to, you just tell me. But other than that, my heart is there. And thanks, everybody. Okay? All right. See you soon. Cheers.